I'm finding it very difficult to tell whether or not the video I just watched is a joke. It's getting a very positive response and a great number of comments are agreeing with the video. But just look at this.
Here's someone saying the literal definition of feminism doesn't have meaning. And here's where you get fucking wrecked. This is the definition, and the main argument people have against it is that feminists do not follow this definition. So I ran a fucking poll, and over 1,000 people voted. 69% of feminists believe that women are equal to men. So the mass majority of feminists follow the fucking definition of feminism.
Defending feminism by claiming, based on a Twitter poll, that almost 1 in 3 feminists believe women are superior or inferior to men. Gigantic, hilarious, obvious issues aside, it still doesn't tell us if the 69% who said they're equal line up with the definition of feminism he's using. We don't know if they engage in advocacy for women's rights. He used a useless method of trying to prove his point with the wrong question and got quite a bad result. At that point in the video, I thought it was an obvious piss take, but apparently not. The main point of the video was to argue not that feminism can be useful, not that overall it's a force for good, but that it is needed in the West. And that, as he says in his little introduction, everyone who disagrees is an idiot.
Feminism isn't needed in the Western world. Or so that's what a lot of you fucking idiots keep saying.
So we must have feminism. Feminism is needed in the West. Quite an extreme position, so you'd expect it to have very, very strong points and arguments supporting it. And what we're going to do now is skip through this video and take a look at everything we're given instead, bearing in mind that he's told us this is what feminism is.
Feminism is the advocacy of women's rights on the grounds of political, social, and economic equality to men.
And that he is arguing it is needed. Not that it would be nice, not that it could do good, but that it is necessary. Now, with all that out of the way, let's get stuck in.
Speaking of the UK, according to this, women still cannot serve on the front lines. That is not equality, and that calls for feminism.
Firstly, last I heard, that could be changing by the end of this year. Just search UK women frontline and take your pick of the reporting. Why is advocacy required for something that's already set to happen? The system is on the side of that change. Feminism really isn't necessary. And secondly, why is that needed? If certain frontline roles never become open to women, how much does that matter? Are we desperately lacking troops? Is there some huge untapped number of women who are fit enough and really want to? What are the consequences of not doing this? He didn't give any, so I'm going to go ahead and say, no, the change isn't actually needed, and therefore the thing to make that change isn't needed either. But feminism might be needed for something else. Let's see what else he's got.
Apparently some people have tried to oppress women by implying men should pay less for healthcare than women.
Maybe I should make another channel and call it Oppressive Implications. Okay, let's be extra fair. Let's be so generous as to make an argument for him. Let's pretend his point was something more like, because there are people saying men should pay less for health insurance, we need feminism as a counter to that, to assert that they should pay the same, which I think might be what he's getting at. But I'd say what you really need is an argument or counter-argument, not just assertion. Because what we had in his source was some guy basically saying men are getting less for the same amount of money, which sounds kind of feministy to me, the kind of inequality they like to point out. It's an argument that men face systemic discrimination. And maybe you could counter that by saying, no, women have to be equal so you pay the same. But if you have to resort to that and can't just shoot their arguments down, how do you know you're doing the right thing for equality? So feminism could work there, but it isn't needed, and it would be better to beat the ideas.
Another example of why we in the Western fucking world need feminism.
Why? What does feminism do to help people's feelings of fear? Well, it certainly helps the fear, but I mean, what does it do to help get rid of that fear? What change would you call for, and how would it work? Women are afraid, so we need feminism. To do what? More police? A weapon for every woman? What?
The US women's soccer team gets paid disgustingly less than the US male soccer team. And this is exceptionally odd because according to this article, their most recent World Cup was the most watched soccer game in American television history. And if they're getting more views, they should at least get equal fucking pay. This is why we need feminism in the Western fucking world.
We need feminism because soccer players' pay isn't decided by views. Mate, this is more like YouTube ad revenism racism than feminism. It doesn't just work like that everywhere, and I suspect the situation is a tad bit more complex than that. If you want to convince me there's a problem here, you've got to show me how much they're bringing in versus how much they're individually being paid, as compared with the men. In other words, are they being discriminated against by their bosses, by the people who decide how much they get paid, or are the fans discriminating? Because if that's the case, too bad. That's how entertainment works. Yeah, you're kicking a ball around, you're all playing the same sport, but really what you're doing is creating a spectacle and milking the people who want to see it, directly or indirectly. If all the pieces of the business don't work together to get you enough money, too bad. Fix it. If you're not being discriminated against from above, and you can't figure out any changes to get the amount of money you want, maybe it's just not for you. But perhaps more than anything, I can't take seriously this idea that we need this advocacy for women's rights because they're not getting paid quite enough to play a game.
Apparently in Texas, maxi pads and tampons were being confiscated before people could enter a courthouse, but for some fucking reason, people could still hold on to their goddamn gun.
Here's something interesting. I decided to search Texas courtroom maxi pads, and I found some articles from when this happened saying sugar packets and condoms were also being confiscated. So something related to the male reproductive system was being confiscated too. If you care to look at it that way, why were they being confiscated? Not because they're dangerous, but because they figured they'd be thrown in protest during debate over an abortion bill, which is something he might have been able to go somewhere with, but didn't touch on. Back to the confiscation though. I agree that it was a problem, but I think it's more about don't take any of my stuff, thank you very much, than the pads and tampons in particular. Because although I might not have as urgent a need for them, I don't want them taking my goddamn sugar and rubber johnnies.
Another marvelous point. As far as health insurance goes, a ridiculous amount of people object to women getting drugs related to the reproductive system, and yet when men want drugs related to the reproductive system, it's completely fucking fine. Individuals literally protest against things like birth control being covered by insurance, but not vasectomies and penile implants.
If you want that situation evened out, you could advocate for women to have the right to have birth control covered by their health insurance. However, on the other hand, you could also fight for vasectomies and penile implants to not be covered. Even if your aim is that kind of balance, that kind of equality, you don't have to do it through advocacy of women's rights. That's the simplest way to say feminism isn't needed, even if you think a balance or equality like that is. On top of that simple response, you could also point out that penile implants are there to fix something that's gone wrong, and so maybe doesn't line up quite so well with birth control. But hey, he's arguing needed, so you only need the lightest slap back to beat it.
Yes, anti-feminist.
Oh, this reminds me, can I just take a second now while I have the opportunity to say, I get called that a lot, but I wouldn't call myself that.
There is no need for feminists in the Western world, is there? Despite the fucking obvious inequality.
He really used a powerful example while he said that. In the back there, we need feminism, because most of the time when a man can go topless, a woman cannot, with some obvious and well-known exceptions. I'm just imagining it, someone saying, I need feminism, because I want to take my shirt off in public. Or maybe someone saying, I just want to flash people without getting in trouble. In all seriousness though, women should be allowed to, and feel comfortable, going topless whenever. And they should as much as possible, because you know, your rights are like muscles. If you don't exercise them, they wither away and atrophy. Come on ladies, get them out for your own good. It's to defend your super serious right to strip off in public. It's really important. This is why we need feminism.
In this country, we allow rapists to sue for custody.
Alright, that sounds real bad, and the example he gives is really nasty. But why is feminism the answer to that? Because we're sticking to the dictionary definition he picked, I'm having a real hard time putting equality into that equation. And I think most people who get upset by hearing, we allow rapists to do this, would respond with, well, don't allow rapists to do that. It would be about putting restrictions on a criminal, far more than it would be about advocacy of women's rights on the grounds of equality. And like I said, I don't get how that fits. How would you phrase this? Like, women need to have the right to not have rapists be allowed to do this. If you want to change that situation, it doesn't need to be done from a feminist perspective. Feminism isn't needed there.
The definition of slut itself specifically states that only a woman can be considered a slut. You know goddamn well that in our Western society, if a man sleeps around with women, he is far better treated than when a woman sleeps around with many men. You know for a fact this is fucking true. And this is why we need feminism in the fucking Western world.
And what's feminism's solution to this? Just say, treat them the same. Will feminism lead to episodes of Jeremy Kyle where they're not sure who the mother is? Even if we need to change this, I'm not sure feminism can do it. Because I always thought this stemmed from Let's say you're a woman. You sleep with a guy. You get pregnant. Turns out he's been sleeping around. Well, you still know you're the mother. He's the father. But let's say you're a guy. You sleep with a woman. She gets pregnant. Turns out she's been sleeping around. Maybe you're the dad. Maybe you're not. Maybe you'll get stuck anyway. At the very least, I think that's gotta feed into it, and I'm not sure how you'd counter that. So this is another one of those. What would feminism even do? What would you be advocating? And how do you know it would do anything? Responses.
You know that tradition in our society where a man is expected to ask the father for permission or his blessing to marry his fucking daughter?
Does anyone feel required to do that now, though? I mean, people recognize it's traditional and it's old-fashioned. They can do it or they cannot. A lot of people just like the idea of it. It's not something you need to smash and rescue them from. And again, what are you gonna do? Shame people who go for that? And if feminism succeeds in getting rid of this, what good will that do? This is the kind of cold equality that swoops down and sterilizes your personal relationships. No, this really isn't what feminism's needed for.
This is how religion is divided up in the United States. Do you notice a consistency? The most popular religions in the United States have specific texts blatantly oppressing women.
And then blah blah blah, examples, until he gets to his point.
This is the book the majority of Americans in the Western world support, and this is why we fucking need feminism in the Western world.
And what are you gonna do? Push for the right to burn books? Let's say you're on board with the text behind him. What will feminism, as defined at the beginning of his video, do about that? Getting rid of support for a book isn't really covered under feminism, is it? How the fuck does it always go like this, even in microcosm? You go from, oh, things need to be equal, this is, men have this, women need this too. And then you end up with, people shouldn't be looking at this book. How does this always happen? How has it happened so quickly here? His video is only like 5 fucking minutes long and he covered the whole journey. Going back to his specific point though about not supporting books that promote rape. What will happen if support of the Bible decreases? Will rapes go down? When it comes to religion, people pick and choose a lot, which can be a criticism of their faith, but it's also definitely a good thing that they do pick and choose, and interpret and reinterpret, and disregard and reconsider, because otherwise maybe we would see a huge impact from every little quote. As it stands though, there being some really sketchy stuff in the Bible doesn't make feminism necessary.
Now over 2,000 people have voted, and it looks like we're up to 73%. So I've proven that the majority of feminists believe in equality.
But mate, you're saying 1 in 4 don't. That doesn't actually sound good for you.
And I've also provided many examples of why we still need fucking feminism in the Western world.
School dress codes, come on, is that the dragon feminism's gonna slay? Or his last example is that women have to be cautious when they get drunk and men don't?
So fuck you, you stupid piece of fucking shit.
So yeah, I'm not quite sure what the percentage of pure wind-up is versus serious attempt to argue, which is fine. I sometimes do stuff a little bit more like that. But some of the comments underneath it in agreement made me want to shoot myself in the face, so I just needed to give it a quick once-over glance. And now I'm working on figuring out a way to shoot myself in the face twice. But, as usual, that's just another one of my harmful opinions. Is the end of the video, and that means it's time to shill. I'm currently selling a t-shirt designed via Teespring. It is a naked woman with hair the color of my brain logo. If you want a shirt like that, links are in the description.